What's going on YouTube? Chronos here, and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So today's video we're going to do a retake at our weapons progression guide that we did back during episode 3. Now that episode 4 is released, a lot of new weapons are starting to pop up, and there are a couple more options where beforehand we kind of looked away from a few things. So I did kind of want to revisit this. Also to get a new video up for people that are just jumping into the game at episode 4. People tend to not look at older videos, so I do want to kind of get some new stuff out there. I also wanted to address something really quick here before we got started. I actually did get a comment about this, and I read through a lot of I read through all the comments, to be honest, guys, at some point. And I had someone ask, fair question, why bother doing these? You're just reading from a wiki itself. You're not really telling people where to get these weapons, so on and so forth. To be perfectly honest, people most time don't know this wiki exists. Part of the reason why I specifically go through the wiki and don't just give you guys pictures of what weapons to use and click on things is I want to show you how I'm finding the answers I'm actually getting here. You're able to see it in front of you. Even if you want to just pause the video, take some time to read through it, find out why I make the suggestions I do, it's fairly easy for you to see right there. And you can see someone going through this process almost like it's a friend of yours trying to teach you how to play the game, which is the way some people actually described my videos to me. So I thought that was kind of cool. And I like that sort of vibe. So I'm going to stick to that specifically, but I will try to also include if there are any specific ways you should be going towards certain weapons, how you should go towards them, and so on and so forth. But let's not let that drag on too long. So, like I mentioned with episode 4, some things have changed. We're going to use sword as our example here because it actually does cover a lot of what I want to talk about. So you're just now getting into the game itself. You picked your class, you got your weapon, you know your weapon you're gonna like. How should you know when to upgrade, what you should upgrade, when you should upgrade those weapons, not just switching between weapons. Fairly early on, it's pretty simple. Don't worry too much about upgrading your weapon itself other than the quests that ask you to do so. In between 1 stars all the way really down to, I would say, almost 10 stars, 8 stars probably the spot I would stop at. You really can just use whatever happens to be the best. So whatever you equip, go ahead and check it versus the weapon you had on previously, see what ends up being the best for you, take whatever's got more damage on it. Other than that, you're really just wasting resources, you're wasting your money on a weapon you're going to swap out fairly quickly. The reason I stopped at 8 star is there's this Lambda series of weapons. Part of PSO2, there are weapons that are considered all class weapons. These weapons can be used by any single class no matter what the actual weapon type it is. Normally in PSO2, you have to have a class to support your weapon choice. In this case, we're looking at sword, so it would be Hunter. To be able to use the weapon, the requirement means you have to have that as your main class itself. This requirement, however, is all class, so it doesn't matter what class you're using. One thing to mention about these weapons are in most cases, they have a photon art that goes along with them, meaning it doesn't matter what class you're using, you always have access to one photon art. If you're playing, however, a class where you're using, say, Hunter as the subclass and not the main class, or sorry, if you're playing a non-main class Hunter in this case, you would want to have Hunter as a subclass if you were going to use a sword. For example, if you were leveling up your fighter, but you're used to playing sword, you can use something like the Lambda weapon and have Hunter as your sub and still have access to all of your photon arts. Basically, excuse me, basically having your subclass set does give you access to photon arts for that weapon, so it's kind of cool. But that's really the only reason for these weapons themselves. Other than that, they're just kind of fodder to feed into other weapons later on down the line. And a quick note, you can pick up weapons to feed to your mag. I would recommend checking out a mag guide. There's one on the channel. Some other content creators have some good ones as well. So look around. I'm sure you'll find plenty of answers to the questions of how to feed your mag and how weapons play into that. Moving on further down, 10 stars, kind of one of our first stops. You end up running into weapons similar to this. Now, granted, the Dragon Slayer is a bit of a meme when it comes to sword. Some people will tell you they want to go with a build where they're just using normal attacks over and over again. It's not worth it. The only reason we would stop at this point, honestly, is because of something called alternate history. Alternate history provides you an extra 10% damage or 10% experience bonus, and there are other weapons of other weapon type, there are weapons of other weapon types that also provide this to you. My first thoughts are rifle with the holy rifle. Katana also has one as well, and a few other weapons I'm sure people will mention in the comments below, but part of it is it just gives you some extra experience. If it's not really that huge of a deal, you can kind of just skip over it. Keep on pushing on down. The real first stopping point you'll make, you can choose to kind of stop here. You've got access to these 11 stars. If you're leveling up and doing AQs, you're going to have tons of photon boosters, which are used to pick up these 11-star weapons. They're decent, however, they don't have a lot of use outside of just stat sticks and what's called their special ability factor, SAF. I don't want to get too complicated into what an SAF is, but essentially this is used in the process called augmenting in the game, where you move skills from one weapon over to the next. This one has some extra use in being able to move a relatively strong skill directly onto another weapon with 100% drop, with 100% chance. So it's worth looking into because you are going to upgrade one at some point, probably to use as fodder. Fodder being material sacrifice, basically, for the augmenting process. But a lot of people tend to shy away from this, so you can kind of skip right over this process. So again, a lot of this is just kind of whatever. It's mostly when we hit this stage here. So our 12 stars are kind of our first stopping point when we start upgrading weapons. Now, I mentioned beforehand, one of the benefits of the Lambda sword before this one here was it's all class. Well, same thing goes along with the Sigma sword. Sigma's all class, and it actually does have that 1 PA that you can use no matter what class combination you are. Meaning that if you were, say, something crazy like fighter bouncer, and you wanted to use a sword because that's just what you're leveling, you can still use Guilty Break no matter what. Now granted, if you don't have Guilty Break learned, it'll use the level 1 version of the skill itself, but if you do learn the skill, even if you can't equip it, it will use the version that you actually have, so it's pretty nice. On top of that, if you're playing a class like Braver or Bouncer, your main mag of choice is a Dexterity mag. Because of that Dexterity mag, you're getting extra points in Dexterity, and if you're leveling other classes, it makes it fairly easy to be able to equip a Sigma weapon, which is why some people mention secret Discord tech is making a Dex mag, even if you're not using it, even if you're not using it for your main class, it can be of use for you leveling other things, being able to equip Sigma weapons fairly early on. One of the most notable would be a Sigma launcher for leveling in advanced quests. Before I continue from the Sigma section, I do want to make one quick note for anyone who is playing with a subclass specifically of Hunter and you don't have access to great movement skills. The Sigma Wired Lance provides you two things, being the fact that your subclass Hunter means you have access to the photon arts. Sigma Wired Lance has a Wired Lance in general has a photon art called Spin Dance. At level 15, it uses 5 PP. It's very, very quick, and it's very minimal on PP, so it's great on your PP economy, and it's also available to anyone who has Hunter as a subclass. So classes like Ranger, trying to think off the top of my head what classes I would even use this on. Honestly, it's mostly like Ranger. You could argue for Bouncer, you could argue for Gunner and things of that sort, but it does have an added effect on top of it as well. As you can see, it also has the option to use Shifta. So if you're playing a class, say like Fighter, who doesn't have access to techniques, you can actually Shifta yourself and have that extra damage bonus. So very, very nice weapon to have a hold of. We're going to hop back to our previous list and look at Nox weapons. So Nox weapons are kind of just the stat sticks of PSO2 at the moment. Some of them have notable good potentials, which is what you mostly look at when you're looking at weapon choices. In this case, the sword has it's increased melee defense and striking and range power by 18% while in guard stance. Good if you're actually playing Hunter properly and playing with guard stance, depending upon the quest you're doing. I mean, that's kind of not fair to say by saying playing Hunter properly, but if you're playing Hunter using a guard stance tree with guard stance advance, this is beneficial to you. However, if you're not, then it really isn't that great. And you'll find that be the case with a lot of other Nox weapons. So I would highly, highly recommend checking out your specific class category. I'm going to leave a link in the video description below to get to the actual wiki itself, so you can check this out on your own. Why do we recommend Nox weapons if they don't have the greatest potential for everyone? Well, part of the process of grinding your 13-star weapons more towards your endgame-ish weapons. I say endgame-ish because not every 13-star really is going to be an endgame weapon for you. But part of that process is upgrading these 12-star weapons and then using them as fodder for your 13 stars to feed into them. It might seem a little confusing to a new player, but I would highly recommend checking out the channel. There's a video talking about upgrading 13-star weapons specifically. Once you watch that video, this will make a lot more sense to you. But basically, just know that not only is this going to be a useful weapon for you to actually fight with, you might have some use for it later on down the line with upgrading a more powerful weapon. This is actually the point where we're going to mostly stop here. I don't want to get too far into 13 stars. I want to make that its own video for every single weapon category. But outside of going into Nox, you really have one other choice that I would say push into your 13-star category with. And the reason I say this now versus what I used to beforehand is because it has some new things that were offered in episode 4. The Revulsio weapons actually are fairly nice to use as an intro 13-star, mainly because they have a collection file for them. Now, collection files, the way those work out, essentially they're these kind of mini quests in a sense. You pick them up from right next to the quest counter. It's right next to Coffee to the right of where she's at. And you'll be able to do these collection files. Now, collection files, essentially all you're doing is completing the tasks that they have in there for you. Most of the time it ends up being killing enemies, completing exploration quests, and completing urgent quests. Now, once you've completed enough of them, or each time you complete them, basically completing the actual task it asks for, a bar increases. Once it goes to 100%, then the item that is there showing in the actual collection file will drop guaranteed. Once you've collected all 3 items, you then actually get the reward for the collection file. The reason why these are actually so great, where they weren't that amazing beforehand, is they're actually dropping as plus 30 weapons. They are max element and plus 30, meaning they're already upgraded mostly for you. Plus 30 isn't the maximum that you would actually use for a weapon. However, for an intro 13 star, this is actually relatively strong. It's a pretty solid stat stick, and its potential isn't the best, but it also isn't terrible. So you kind of get the balance of a solid weapon where you don't have to invest much into it. Whereas any other 13 star option is going to cost you money because you have to upgrade the weapon itself. In most cases, you'd be better off sticking to your actual 12 star that's upgraded. And you, again, with this process, you want to make sure these weapons are upgraded. Again, if you're not sure how to do that, check out the channel. There's videos about that process itself too. Upgrade these weapons themselves. In most cases, you're better off sticking to here than jumping to an unupgraded 13 star, because an unupgraded 13 star is weaker than an actual upgraded 12 star. So keep that in mind as far as your weapons go. And that's pretty much it for your intro into your 13 star step process. As far as weapon progression goes, it's not too difficult or too complicated. Each class has their exceptions to the rule and a couple of things you want to pick up on the side, like for example, Hunter or Hunter subs with the access to the Sigma Wired Lance for buffing and movement. There is one other thing I actually want to mention as well on the side. There are 2 classes that actually have access to a 12 star, where you're better off sticking to that 12 star once you're able to get to it than touching any 13 star whatsoever, including Revulsio, until you get to Nemesis weapons. And that's going to be Rifle and Rod. So take a look at Rod. We have this 12 star here called the Psycho Wand. And if you take a look at the stats of the Psycho Wand compared to everything else below it, all these weapons basically honestly are better off not existing. You can skip everything here, even if something might be a bit better base stats wise, which I'm almost 100% positive nothing is going to be better when you actually include the potential in alongside of this. It's just not worth it when it comes down to how much you're going to invest into the weapon itself. So Psycho Wand Force is a really, really solid intro weapon into your 13, or before you're able to afford your actual 13 star weapon, which in this case is going to be your Nemesis Sage. So you can pretty much skip all this stuff, get into your Psycho Wand, get it upgraded properly, go ahead and make sure that it's maximum grind, that you can get it to, as well as maximum element, and you'll be good to go for your intro into 13 stars and into endgame. Same thing happened with, oh, hang on, actually, this is the wrong tab. Be nice if we were prepared, but we never are. It's one of my videos, that's how it works. But same thing happened for Rifle, by the way. Elder Rifle. Elder Rifle is also ridiculously powerful, and you're better off just sticking to this weapon until you're actually able to reach your Nemesis weapon itself. It's extremely powerful. It's got crazy base damage. It also has a potential that makes it easier for you to use the weapon. If anyone knows about Ranger, you know that standing snipe is actually your highest DPS in most cases, unless you're using Elder Rifle, where Elder Rifle specifically buffs your moving snipe damage, meaning it leaves you a little bit more movement, or it gives you a bit more movement, so you're a bit more defensive, you're a bit safer, it's a bit easier than just standing still for all of your damage and possibly getting bopped. So these are the only 2 weapons that are the case in this situation. Again, of course, there are audible mentions all over the place. People will mention other weapons you can go towards, but I want to keep this very generalized. If you guys have any other tips, tricks, any other small little weapon choices that you might want to say, hey, look, this is something good to go towards, feel free to toss this in the comment below. A like on the video, as always, is much appreciated and absolves you of half of your ad block guilt, and the other half is absolved by subscribing and keeps you up with all the content that's coming up on the channel itself. It also was notified to me that clicking the bell icon itself, maybe if I could speak that would help, but clicking the bell icon does notify you when videos do go up, as well as notifies you of the community posts, which I use those posts to let you guys know of when I'm actually live over on Twitch, if you're not in the Discord or following me on Twitter, which you could do either one of those. So if you don't want to click that, just go do one of those. All those things work. Anyway, guys, hopefully this is helpful. See you guys on the next one. Take care. Peace out.